All right, this is video 2 in the series of videos we're doing on how to make this cherry bowl. In this video, we'll go through everything from importing the file and setting it up with its tool paths, adjusting the limit planes, carving it, all the way down to finishing it. And by the time we get done with this video, you will have the ability to make that bowl, provided you have the file from Corbin. If you don't have his file, if you have another two-sided bowl file, you'll be able to use that and set that up for carving. With that, let's get started into video 2.
Let's get started into creating a new file. And it's a double-sided project. We have 9.5 inches wide by 9.5 inches high, 2.5 inches thick. We're going to zero off the machine bed in this project. I'm going to leave it in the center for now, and then before I carve it, I will change it to the bottom left. I'm going to turn it from left to right, and for the speed, processing speed, I'm going to go very high for now. I want cherry. It looks like it's already got it, so we're going to hit OK. And now we have our block of material set up to import the model. Just like we did with the drip stock, we're going to go ahead and import an STL model. We're going to import the heart bowl, hit open, and we're going to scale from millimeters to inches. We're going to center the model, and everything's in place. Corbin developed both these files to go together. I didn't change the first file, and I'm not going to change this file. We now position and import the model. I look to see where it is in the block, and to me it looks like it's in a good location. Let's twiddle it around by holding the right mouse button, and we can adjust where the model is inside the block. We just want to make sure that it's all in the block here and that we could carve it all. We are going to go ahead and create both sides in this model. We're not going to discard what was on the bottom half of the model. And the overcut distance, that's the amount it's going to cut past this limit plane. And this limit plane will be created. So if we don't do anything with it, that limit plane will be at 0 inches. I happen to know that the right value is somewhere around 0.6 or so, 0.7. So for now, I'm going to just leave it at 0 and show you that if you didn't know that, how you could go about it, adjusting that inside the model once we import it. So with that, let's go ahead and import the model. So now we have the model imported, both sides. Let's change this to double-sided view by clicking on that toggle right there. And so this is what the model looks on one side and how the model looks on the other side. Remember that Vectric does not show undercuts, so that's why this looks straight down, and we'll take care of all that when we carve from the bottom. If we open up the component and I click on the heart bowl, you will notice that it only gives down to the limit plane right here. And the limit plane, if I click on it, let me double click, you can see it's set at 0. And that's what we're going to need to adjust to be able to get this bowl to carve all the way down into the bottom. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to come over here and I'm going to click on the limit plane. And now that I've got the limit plane here, I'm going to start moving the limit plane down into the bowl. So I'm going to be moving it down. And I want you to watch the green area and the brown and see what happens as I move it down. Okay, that's 0.6. And you can see the green comes almost down, but you still have this brown here, meaning the model is ending before it's fully carved. As you can see, I'm trying to demonstrate how you move this plane, and you have to look inside the bowl and outside the bowl as it's moving down. That's what those arrows are pointing at, is one the slider and the other one is the inside of the bowl. And you can see the brown as it starts to go down. If you look right there in the center, you'll see the green pop through, and then I still need to take it down a little bit more, and then there'll still be a little brown, and then I'll go from there. So let's listen to what I'm talking about in this next section. And did you see where we still had brown and I just moved it down a bit? So let me move it just back up, and I want to see if you can see that. All right, so you can see this brown right here. We need to get down just past that. We're at 0.7558 or minus 0.7558. So I'm going to move it down just a touch. This is kind of tricky as you play with this, and I think it probably depends on which computer you're using and how well the processor is. I'm using a very strong Windows processor now. I went away from my Mac because my Mac could not handle this. So now when we take a look here, I'm going to click off there. If we twiddle around here, you can see, if I click on the limit plane as the model, you can see it goes all the way down to where everything is past the green and going to carve. So with that, we'll be able to carve the top side of the model all the way down. So now let's go to the two views. I'm going to close this over here. And if you, let's go to the top here. If you saw the drip stock bowl and you recall, I used the process of clicking on the model and then coming over to the design tab and using the bit trace map tool. And then I adjusted the threshold till I had the whole model looking solid. And that's what I just did here. I moved it all up. I then hit preview to get the outside vector. I'm going to hit apply, and I'm going to rename that vector. I'm going to move it to layer. Well, it's already on layer 1 and nothing else is on layer 1, so I can use layer 1 for this case, just like I did on the drip stock. And I'm going to call this model vector. And like I did with the drip stock, I'm going to go and put an offset in here, and I'm going to use the same number, I'm going to close this. I'm going to use the same number I did with the drip stock. I'm going to go outward right, 0.12. I'm going to create sharp corners for this primarily down here. I'm going to hit offset, and this one I'm going to move to a new layer called tool vectors, and I'm going to change this to blue. Hit OK. And now I've got the vectors I need set up for the top of this bowl. So I'm going to go ahead and carve the top of this bowl at this time. I'm going to move this over here, make it so I can see it a little better. The first bit I'm going to use is a roughing pass. First I need to check the material setup. It has you do that automatically on a two-sided bowl. And just like I did before, I'm going to move this to the top, but I'm going to make it 0.02 inches below. So it corresponds with what we did with the drip stock. You can see the whole model thickness is 2.155, and that means that we're going to have a gap of 0.3645 at the bottom of the bowl if we carve all the way to the bottom of the model itself. Hit OK. So now we're going to go ahead and select the bits I'm going to use. So the first bit I'm going to use is a 3/8 inch ball nose. I'm going to go to the selected vectors. I'm going to pick this vector, or if I wanted to, remember, I can use the vector selection tool and I could go to the tool vectors. Either way. I'm not going to do a boundary offset because I've already got my boundary offset built in with this 0.12 vector out here. I'm going to leave my machining tolerance at 0.04. That's what I normally use. I'm going to go ahead and use a Z-level strategy, 90-degree raster angle, because I'm going to go with the grain. I've already selected this. I'm going to call this a 375 ball nose top rough. Hit calculate. And then I'm going to hit the preview visible. The next thing I'm going to do then is do my finishing pass. So my finishing pass, I come up here to the finishing pass. All right, so now I'm going to pick a tapered ball nose from my database. I'm going to delete that other part, so I'm going to remove this ball nose. I'm going to select the tapered ball nose from my rip bits. I'm going to use the tapered ball nose right here. I'm going to pick this one. Now this says the pass depth is 2.5 inches for this bit, but if I recall from before, since it's a 1/8 inch bit, it was really 0.125. So I'm going to go ahead and select it, and then I'm going to change it. Well, it doesn't matter because in a final pass or a finishing pass, it will go to the depth of whatever the material is. So I'm going to also use the selected vectors, which we have right here. Or I can select down here and use the vector like I did before, tool vectors, hit close. With that, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to hit a raster, and I'm going to go with the grain of the cherry, which is 90 degrees, means up and down. Everything else looks good, and I'm going to call this 125 TBN finish and hit calculate. So that's what the finishing toolpath looks like. I haven't previewed it yet, and that's because I want to talk about it first. Now, what you're going to find when you preview this, you're going to find an interesting situation. If you recall back to what we looked at when we looked at the model doesn't accept undercuts. And we know that on the bottom side of this bowl is an undercut. And so what we want is a nice smooth carve around the edge as much as possible, but we also know that if we're not careful, the bit's going to travel all the way down trying to cut the model on the side. And so let me show you what happens and then what we need to do to deal with it. So in summary, I had to go past the edge of the bowl itself to get a better profile cut around the edge, a smoother cut. Otherwise, it would have just ended at the pixelization of the model. So if we look at the model real quick, and you look real close, you can see all these pixels. Well, we don't want that. We want to come past it and down, kind of like if we were doing a profile cut. So keep that in mind as we look at the 3D view when we carve this thing. Here we go. So at first blush, this looks pretty good, nice and smooth. So all in all, that looks pretty good, you would think. But if we twiddle this thing by holding the right mouse and clicking it or using this up here, what we will notice is, look at the edge there. It drops all the way down into the crevice of the bowl. If you look over at the bottom, look in this area over here. If I hover, you see we're at 2.5 inches because we're zeroing off the bottom. And if we come over into this deep area right here, you can see we go to 1.13. So 1.13228. Let's do some math real quick. So now that I have the calculator here, let's see if we can do it again. So we know that we've got 2.5 inches, 2.5 minus whatever this number is right in here, and it says 1.168. Let's just say 1.17. 1.17 equals, and you can see that's 1.33 inches deep. Now that's pretty deep, and that could easily damage your 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. So we got to adjust that. We got to take care of it. And the question is, how do you do that? Well, the way you do that, at least the way I do it, based on my experimentation with this process, is you've got to limit how far down, how far the travel is going to be with that tapered ball nose. And so to do that, you have to take it to a point where it's not going to go all the way deep. It's bounded. So right now with this 0.12 inches, it's not bounded any further. The bit will go down 1 point some odd inches that we talked about. So now let's see it, how to do this now. So if we go in here and we have a boundary offset, which is the boundary offset from here, so we're going to need to go negative 0.06 or 0.07. So I'm going to go to 0.06 at first. Hit calculate. And then I'm going to reset the preview visible. And now you can see we still have the lip being carved now. It's actually coming past the carving. I'm going to measure the depth of this right here. All right, let's see how deep this goes. So if we look at the edge now, you can see it goes down to about 2.27. So 2.5 minus 2.27, it's only 0.25 inches. And just the tip of the bit's going down, and that should work just fine. We're going to do a nice rollover. And so that's a pretty good offset. So now we have the top of the bowl carved. Everything is looking good. We're set up with the tool paths there, but we need to add one more set of tool paths. And that is, we need to add a couple alignment holes. And our alignment holes are going to be 0.43 inches in diameter. I'm going to create one here in the center. I'm going to create another one over here and another one over here. Fixing the sides of the alignment holes and making it so they don't hit my tracks. Alignment dowels will make those red. And now we need to set up, put them in there. So I like to use a profile toolpath. The cut depth will be 0.5 inches. I'll make it 0.7 inches. And I'm going to select a downcut bit, or an upcut bit actually. And we're going to go 0.7. 6 passes doesn't make sense. Let me check out what that bit, 1/4 inch. Path depth, I want that. I don't know how it got changed to 0.125 to be 2.5. Hit OK. Now that makes sense. We're going to be on the inside because we're going to spiral on the inside. And then I'm going to add a ramp and a spiral, and that will make a nice toolpath. Selector, associate with, alignment dowels, close, calculate. So now we have our alignment dowels. Let's preview those. All right, terrific. Now, the other thing that we have to do while we're on this side, I'm going to go to the 2D view here, is transfer these alignment dowels over to the other side so that when we go to turn the bowl over, we'll carve the top first, that we can put these holes in the right location to keep everything squared up into the spoiler board. So we're going to take all 3 of these holes. I'm going to right-click it, and I'm going to say copy to the other side. So now they will be on the other side. Let's validate that. And there they are on the bottom side. There they are on the top side. So now we have our alignment holes on the top, the bottom. We've carved our top, and the next step then is to go ahead and set up the bottom side of the bowl for carving. So now that we have the top bowl all set to carve, let's turn it over and do the bottom side. So on the bottom side, I forgot to transfer those vectors over, so I need to do that. So let me turn it back over. I'm going to take this vector and this vector, and I'm going to copy those to the other side, turn it over, and now we're starting fresh. So now we're on the bottom side of the bowl that we're going to need to set up. And the first thing that we need to do is to go ahead and make sure that the bit, when we set up our tool paths, will cut all the way down to the bottom of the bowl. And to do that, that means we need to adjust our limit planes. Once we do that, then we'll go ahead and put in the tabs so that we can hold the bowl in place, and then we'll set up our tool paths. So let's look at the limit planes. So we come over here in the 3D mode, and we look at the limit plane, and we look at where it's going to cut down to. Right now, the tool path will only cut down to this area right here, which isn't all the way down. We needed to cut all the way down into this area right here to get all of this away. So the way to do that, I'm twiddling the image with my right mouse button. You can either do it with this thing or your right mouse button. And so now let's go set the limit plane. So we're going to come over here, we're going to select the limit plane. Now that we've got the limit plane selected, let me move this over, see if we can see it better. I am going to grab this area right here, and you can see it set at minus 0.6. That's what we did when we first set up the project. And now I'm going to slowly pull this plane down. As you can see, look at the light brown as it's moving down. And I'm going to try to make that, as much as possible, have the thinnest area right here when we're all said and done. So right now we're at minus 0.89, and overall that doesn't look bad. That might work. Let me play with it just a little bit more. And you can see I'm going down, and then it looks like it's actually getting worse. I'm looking at that little brown area right to the left. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull that down to where I can get most of that chatter to disappear. To me, it's looking pretty good in that area. It looks like the bit will cut down almost all the way down. Now that we're up a little closer, let's see if I can adjust it a little more, and if not, then we'll call that good. Now if I come down, you see how to me that looks like it's getting a little worse on the end. So let's take a look at what it looks like with green. We'll go back up and come back down and see what happens. Trying to look at as much rollover, and if I look right here in the back, that looks like where it's getting as much of the undercut as it can. So with that, I think we're in good shape. And we now have our limit plane set. If you look at the model, everything's looking good. And from this point forward, we're going to go ahead and set our tab and our toolpaths. To add the tabs, what we're going to do is go to the 3D clip art, bring in 3D tabs, bring this one in here, go to the 2D view, and I'm going to rotate it, bring it up here, and then I'm going to see how it looks in the side of the bowl. Close that. Click on this one here, and I'm going to bring the base height down. Let me get this to where I can see it. So now that I've got that selected, I'm going to go ahead and bring the base height down on this one until it's just going into the bowl right there. 2D view, and I'm now going to take this one and flip it vertically down, create a mirrored copy. So now I have this over here. I'll bring this one in. Now what I'm looking for is the tab has to go beyond where I'm going to cut and into the material far enough to where it's going to be where I need it to be. So hit close for just a second. I want to take one more look at it in the 3D view. And so if I'm looking at that tab, the height is going in at a good height. So I like that. And now I'm going to go back to the 2D view. This one I want to make just a little longer. Select both of them. I'm going to flip them horizontal around the center line now. And now I have the 4 tabs around the bowl that I need. Hit close. So now that I've got the tabs in place, the next thing is to set up the tool paths. And the first toolpath I want to set up will be the 3/8 inch spiral upcut, but one might give consideration to actually using a ball nose to make it smoother, but the spiral upcut worked good for me. Got a pass depth of 0.375, so we'll hit select. I'm going to go all the way out to the material boundary, and you're going to see this in the video, and I'm going to take all this away. And the reason I'm taking all this material away is I want to create enough clearance for the tapered ball nose when it starts getting down in here. I don't want to have to worry about crashes and trying to figure out how far out of a boundary I need and so forth. So just shave it all away, and it takes care of it, and it only takes minutes. So we're going to calculate that, and I'm going to put down here 375 end mill, and that's 3D roughing, and I don't need to put 3D. Calculate, and let's take a look at what that looks like. Now each one of these step downs is 0.375 or 3/8 of an inch, because that's what I put the pass rate at for this tool. It handles it very well. And there you can see where the tabs are sticking out of the bowl, and it's going over the tab. And we've got our finished roughing pass, and you can look down in the lower right corner there, and you can see it went down to 0.25 inches. So there's a 1/4 of an inch of material left here on the bottom. Gives us plenty of room to cut into the bowl with our final pass and not have any clearance issues on the outside of the bowl. And the only thing we have to watch is on the inside of the bowl, and this area right here is the most vulnerable, and it's not going to create a problem. I've already cut this bowl as well as my friend Jim, who's cut it multiple times. So the next one is to set up the finishing pass, and in the finishing pass I'm going to use a tapered ball nose, 1/8 inch. I'm going to go to the selected vectors, and the vector I'm going to go to is this one just outside the model vector. I could have selected it down here or here, either way will work. To not need a boundary offset, because I have already put that in by having this area going out to this vector, I am now going to then do a raster cut 90 degrees, which means it'll go back and forth with the grain of the wood. And I'm going to mark this as EBN 125. 3D finish will be fine. Hit calculate. And now I'm going to preview this now. Because of where we set the limit plane, this will cut all the way through the material and you won't need a profile cut. So that's how that looks on the bottom. It looks good. There is one more tool path that I need to make sure I have on this side, and that's the alignment holes. And I'm going to use a profile tool path. Inside, going to 0.7 inches using a upcut end mill. Inside, and I'm going to use a spiral on that to give me a nice smooth cut. And I'm going to put alignment holes here. I'm going to go to the front or the top side so you can see what this bowl looks like now. So let's flip it over. Let's go ahead and do a quick preview there. Quick reminder, cutting all the way through the material is one of the things the limit plane is supposed to do for us. And there's what the bowl looks like. Looks pretty good. And all we have to do is cut these tabs and sand the edges, and everything turns out well. I didn't show you the alignment holes. If I do the alignment holes from here, we'll preview that. Those will be used to flip the material over. I flip the material over, and I'll do the same thing with these alignment holes, but what's different is these alignment holes will have to be set to come in from the surface, because for these alignment holes to work, they have to go into the spoiler board. So now that I've got everything set up, let me show you what I'm going to do for the tool path here on the bottom. On alignment holes, I'm going to click that, hit close. I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to go ahead and set this up for the bottom left corner, which I previously did off screen. I'm going to then take this and make it off the material surface. So when I go do the alignment holes on the bottom, you'll see me zero off the spoiler board itself. I'm going to hit OK. What I'm going to do here is hit no. Would you like to recalculate now? The answer is no. I don't want to recalculate all the tool paths. The only tool path I want to calculate is the alignment holes. So I'm going to hit no. And then I'm going to come in here to alignment holes, and I'm going to check everything one last time, and I'm going to hit calculate. And it calculated only the alignment holes. I don't really need to preview them, but I will. Hit close. And so I didn't recalculate everything else. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this tool path to the USB port. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here now. Make sure we're set in the lower left corner. As I said, we were originally set in the center, and off screen I sent it into the left corner as I was working with this file off screen. I'm going to go to machine bed. Everything is still 0.02. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to hit no. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select those tool paths that I want to recalculate, which are these two. And I'm going to hit recalculate visible. Now I probably could have gotten away without doing this recalculation visible because I didn't recalculate those to begin with. But I want to be extra sure everything is off the bottom except these alignment holes. So this is just telling me the alignment holes, this one right here, is going to cut to a depth of 3.2 inches, and I understand that's what the software thinks it's going to do. Hit OK. So now we've got the bottom calculated. I'm going to flip it over to the other side, and I'm going to go ahead with these three, and I'm going to recalculate those now. Again, this is an extra step you probably don't have to do, but better safe than sorry. So all of my tool paths are going to be zeroed off the bottom with the exception of the alignment holes on the bottom. Okay. Tool will cut through material. Sheet 1. Yep, we know that. We already said that before. That's on the other side. Hit OK. Hit OK. And now everything is set up for cutting this cherry bowl on my CNC. We'll go ahead and do one more preview. Witness the power of speeding this up. This is only going to take about 10 or 15 seconds the way I'm speeding it up. Flip it over. But in reality, as you know, it would take probably a minute. Preview the back. Maybe more on my Mac until I can get it fine-tuned. So this is what the bowl looks like when it's all said and done. It looks good to me. And we're ready to go out and carve the bowl now. Save all of these tool paths to the USB that I have and bring it to my CNC. I did just think of one other trick that I thought might be of interest to people, and that is if I were to take this model, get it all squared away, if I come over here and I take this cross-section tool right here and I stay in line right down the center here, This will give me a representative. Let me hold shift and bring it straight up. This is the cross section of the bowl. Now the reason it comes down and then up is because it doesn't know that we shaved away basically all of this part here down to 1/4 inch. And I happen to previously have created a bit vector, let me call it in, a vector of the tool on my finishing tool with the collet, and I hit open. And if I use that vector, and let me take snapping off so it will go more smoothly. If I use that vector, this is like, I'm hoping this will make sense. It's like this bit is going up and over and down. And so if I use this vector here and I move my tool path, it's going to be coming from the bottom, and I'm looking at the collet, and what I'm worried about is the collet hitting the bowl at any given time. I am not worrying about the sides because that doesn't exist because of the roughing pass. So now I come in and I grab the tool itself, and I'm going to move it, Command Z, Control Z. Thought I grouped this. Let me group this together to make it easier. Hit G. And now I'm going to take this bit and collet, and I'm going to move it along the path, and that's the deepest path right there. So I'm looking to see, is it going to hit the top of the bowl or anywhere along the side? So I'm now moving it up like I'm carving the bowl. So I'm going to come up over the top of the bowl. Then I'm going to come down the bowl in this direction. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking to see, will this collet hit anywhere on this edge or on the top of the wood of the bowl. And we've got plenty of clearance. And because I'm looking at it this way, it also ensures that I should not hit on either side. So I come down, and when I come in here, the closest it would be over in this area, and you can see that we're not going to hit. So we're in good shape relative to the tool not hitting the bowl. Although you bet I watch like crazy as I'm watching the tool carve the bowl. So with that, let's go ahead and go out and carve the bowl. We'll start with the top side, flip it over, anchor the bowl to the spoiler board, carve the bottom.
At this point in time, we've just finished setting up the software and the tool paths to carve this bowl. And now we're going to go through the detailed process of how I set up the holding, the cutting, the dowels, and everything else to get a good final project. And you've already seen that in the intro, what it looks like. If you like what you're seeing and you're sticking around to this point, do me the favor of hitting that thumbs up button or like button. Give me a comment, share the video, subscribe to the video. With that, let's go ahead and get started into the actual setting up and carving of this bowl. All right, we're at the point now where we're going to surface, make this flat as can be. I've got the bit already on here. I've zeroed off the top of this right here, and I'm just going to do it manually. And I'm going to have the dust collector on because it gets pretty messy otherwise.
Okay, I start out at zeroing off the wood, and I go down 1 millimeter at a time.
Just finished surfacing this part, so now it's nice and flat, so that when I do the carving, I'm going to first carve the inside, then I'm going to flip it over and carve the back or the bottom of the bowl. So everything's sitting nice and flat now, and ready to take one more measurement on thickness. So I have the actual measurement on thickness, and then I will set the bits in and get everything started.
As you can see on the screen, this carve took me 32 minutes, but I know that nobody will tolerate that. And so just wanted to share with you the process, and you can see how much material is being thrown out of there. And you can also see that they are shavings and not sawdust. Put in my tapered ball nose, and one of the things I want you to notice is I'm going down and zeroing off the bottom, but I'm also looking at where that bit is coming next to the wood. I want to make sure that I won't hit it even though I've measured it out in advance. So I start into my finish cut with that 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. I'm watching it very closely from the side, and I had plenty of room. I really liked the shavings that were coming off of it, and so every once in a while I just reach in there with that vacuum cleaner. You can see it is throwing resin all over the place. That's what's to be expected when you're shaving resin, and it makes for a little bit more of a cleanup, but I was trying to capture what a fine job it was doing with the shavings, and when it was all said and done, that bowl looked nice. At this point, I have getting ready to put the dowel holes in, and I put a trial dowel hole over here because I want to see how the dowels will actually fit, because I want them to be pretty snug but not so tight that you can't move, get them in or out. So I used this dowel tool, which I've made before for dowels and magnets, to test to see what size the hole should be. And as I put my dowel holes through here, it turned out to be 0.429 was a good number. So I made the hole of the dowel 0.429, and now I'm going to test it to see how well that works. And here you see me trial fitting one of the dowels. That looks like a good size, so I'm going to go ahead and use that one to place the dowels in the board. So at this point, I went ahead and tested the dowel hole. I think it's the right size. I'm going to now put my dowel holes in the top. Then I'll pull the bowl up and I'll flip it over and put dowel holes in the spoiler board, and then I'll mount it down to the dowel holes. So at this point now I'm going to drill the dowel holes in the spoiler board so that I can flip it and have everything aligned perfect. You may recall this is a tool path that I had to change. It was zeroing off the surface of the material because it was really zeroing off the surface of the spoiler board. Now what you see me doing is measuring how deep I want those dowels in the hole and then cutting them to the right length. I made them 0.7 inches for each depth. So I'm pre-measuring and cutting those dowels so that when I actually take CA glue and put them in the spoiler board and then put them in the block of material also, they'll fit just right and not create an issue. To make sure these dowels will hold extra good, I'm going to go ahead and wipe all this down. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put some CA glue in these dowel holes. So at this point I'm putting medium Starbond CA glue in each of those holes. Then I'll put a double-sided tape on the bottom of the bowl, and I'll also put CA glue in there. And you can see that got a little hydraulic block in there. So I'm going to come back and trim that a little bit more. It's important that that dowel isn't too long or the bowl wouldn't sit on it right. So one more precaution I'm going to actually take is I'm going to put some glue in the dowel holes of the top here. And what that means is when I go to cut the dowels off, when I go to take this off, I'm going to have to cut the dowels off. But what I want is this to be so solid down and held down that there's no way that I'm going to end up with this thing pulling up. The key is I don't want this to move at all. And this thing doesn't feel like it's going to move no matter what. Okay, one of the things I wanted to point out is the reason you have to use those dowels and you have to move it away from your fence system is because it's likely that the dowel placements won't be in such a perfect place that you get your nice tight fit against your fence system again. In other words, you're not going to be able to use your clamps the way you were before when I used the side clamps to hold it against the fence because they move ever so slightly. And you don't know whether they're going to move out or in. So I don't know whether you can see that. I'm hoping you can see that. But you should remember that when I did the top of this bowl, this piece of cherry block was tight up against the fence here. That's why I had this piece in here, because I knew I'd have to take it out and see what happened. And sure enough, it's moved over maybe a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch now to the right here as you're looking at it. And therefore, I can't fasten up tight against that unless I put another block in.
So what you're going to see me do is you're going to see me remove the whole top of this material block at first, and then when I get to a certain point that I've gotten down as low as I want to get, I'll go ahead and see how this is holding.
And if the material is holding well, I'll just leave it as it is and remove the clamps. If not, I'll figure out another holding method. But it turns out it holds just fine.
I've heard of different issues from other people that have made this bowl. My friend Jim Matthews and Corbin, even in one of his videos, talked about how his bowl stock broke loose. So I put the double-sided tape. I glued the dowels in both to the top and the bottom, which could create an issue for me getting the bowl loose later, and we'll find that out. I'm going to have to cut the dowels off, and I may have gotten some super glue on the edge of this, so we'll see how that works out. But just to make sure, I put the wood pieces back in. These are all half-inch ply. This is 3/4 inch. This is likely going to be shaved down to a 1/2 inch because this goes down to about a 1/2 inch thickness when it's cutting everything out. I put some shims in here to keep it tight, and so this not only has hold down support from the dowels and double tape, but I do have the side clamps on. I'm going to have to watch it very close, which means I can't really put much of the dust collection on for long. I can put it on for a while, and then I'm going to have to pull it off as it starts to get closer to the bottom because I need to keep track of it. So that's where I am at the moment, and we're getting ready to get started with this Carve. Let me test the time this says it's going to be. I've already zeroed the bit off the bottom, and this is such a close tolerance, that's why I've got to watch it. I want to make sure that this collet doesn't hit the piece at all, as well as the piece doesn't move. So many things to watch on this Carve. I'm checking the time that the machine says it's actually going to take for this Carve. On my Laguna, there's a function that allows me to do that, and it says it's going to take 22 minutes and 11 seconds. So we'll test it. Hit OK. To start out with, I'm going to set the speed scale down to 0.5 for just a couple minutes to watch it. I want to see how everything's flowing, and then we'll go from there. So I go down there, I hit run, hit 0.5, so that means it's going to be going at 50% of the speed I set, and then I can up it when I'm in the middle of the cut. Hit OK, and now I'm ready to go. Let me put on my safety glasses and my hearing protection, because there is going to be shavings flying all over the place. Okay, that first cut is what I expected, so now I'm going to go ahead and put on the dust collection for about the next 3 or 4 passes. I'll be watching how deep this is getting, and then I'll take it off halfway through.
So I really sped this up, but I'm going down about 3 or 4 passes, and you'll be able to tell by counting the tears on the bowl when I take that dust shoe off. You'll see I made like 3 passes. I was on my 4th pass.
So now you see me took the dust shoe off. This is going to get a lot more messy. There's no way around it. I've got to watch this collet and make sure it doesn't get too low, and see if there's something I need to do to adjust it once I look at it, and we'll see from there where we're at. So that's why you saw me stop, was I want to be able to watch the collet directly from the side, make sure it doesn't hit here.
You can bet I was watching from the side that collet and that bit like a hawk, just watching every minute of it, watching the shavings fly, vacuuming them up, and trying to make sure that there wasn't going to be any collisions between the collet and the top of that bowl. So I kept trying to keep it clean so I could see it, but I was nervous the whole time. I think almost any of us would be for the first time doing this. Not only was I nervous about the collision, but I also was nervous about the stress I was putting on the bit, because I had it pulled out farther than what would be normally recommended. But all in all, it ended up pretty good.
All right, it's going to be 59 minutes, 52 seconds, basically 60 minutes.
I took that 60 minutes and sped it up to 5 seconds because I think you get the gist of it by looking at it carving. Looks pretty good.
Next step is to take the bowl off without ruining it by cutting the tab, so I'm going to try to be extra careful. Of course, my fear here was I'd get too aggressive and do something with those tabs and totally ruin this bowl after several days worth of work. Fortunately, that didn't happen. Now we're at the point where we're going to remove this piece that was holding the bowl down. So I've zeroed off the bed already, and so what we're going to do is we're going to run the tool path, and it should spiral down to get these pegs out, and then it should be able to pull right off. That's the plan anyway. As I was editing, I realized I never showed the tool path for this in the software part, but it was done there. Well, that's a good sign. That popped right up. Okay, that worked out well. Now I just need to get this sticky stuff off here. I'll just do a quick sand here, and this will be nice and level. Works perfect. Well, it's time to try to sand these tabs off. I got to be very careful with this that I don't mess up the epoxy. So this can be pretty aggressive. So we'll just see how it goes. I have to admit that this was one more time when I was puckering up a little bit, worried about getting too aggressive and ruining the bowl after all that work, but it worked out okay. Okay, I'm going to use this Surf Prep sander for this bowl. I particularly like these foam pads, but unfortunately I don't have any of them that are in the coarse grit. All I have is medium and fine. I need to get it some more. All I have that is coarse grit or 80 grit are these, what I'll call kind of like Abernet pads, these screens. To me, this is where the Surf Prep sander absolutely shines because of its size. It's real easy to hold and manipulate, and because of the sponge pad setup. Note that the sanding was a combination of me using the Surf Prep sander with those sanding pads and then switching back and forth to manual sanding and then back to the Surf Prep and then manual sanding. So it was a combination of each that I worked through as I got this bowl sanded down. Okay, the next grit I'm going to go to is on this sponge pad that I just attached some film sanding on. This is 320. I'll do a lot of this by hand also on the inside. I might have been able to skip all of this sanding stuff, but I know lots of people are interested in how I actually sanded the bowl. The epoxy part is actually easier to sand than the wood. I actually think that looks pretty good. I think that's as high as I'm going to go. I think 320 is good enough. Getting all of the grit and sawdust off of it, and then I'll start to put some finish on it. So that's what it looks like before finish. That sucks. I thought I'd been recording this whole time of me putting this on, but you've seen finishes put on before, so no big deal. Let me go through what I did. This can says, start with a clean, dry surface, apply the finish by spreading on thin coats of oil, wait a few minutes, and reapply as necessary when the finish is fully absorbed with no soaking in. Wipe off any excess with a rag or towel. So I've already applied one thin coat, about 10 minutes ago, and I used this white abrasive pad to try to keep it thin, and so far I've only dipped this in the can one time, and I covered this whole bowl top and bottom, and now what I'm doing is I'm letting it sit for a while, and I'm going to watch to see if anything looks like it needs a little more oil, if it looks like it got too dry. Realize that when I carved the bowl, basically the whole sides of the bowl are end grain. So a combination of both. And so now I'm waiting for it to dry, and in about 20 to 30 minutes, I'm waiting for it to soak. 20 to 30 minutes, I'll check, I'll apply some more if necessary, and if not, I'm going to wipe it off with a clean, lint-free rag. So that's where we're at right now. And it's looking pretty good if you ask me. This Bumbleshoot's all wood finish. Smells delicious. Smells like a bunch of lemons. At this time, this has been sitting for about a half hour, 45 minutes, so I'm just going to wipe off any excess. I don't think I need to add any more. So that's what I'm doing right now, is taking a lint-free rag, and I'm just wiping off
any film or excess. So I've got all the excess wiped down. Now I'm going to let this cure till tomorrow, at which point I am going to put on the Benuba wax. In talking with Eric from Bumbleshoots, he indicated that I could just put the Benuba wax straight on it and it would do good. But that if he was really going to recommend the best finish and the hardest finish for this thing, he would put the all-wood conditioner on it first, and then the Benuba wax. And the all-wood conditioner finish, it's got the tung oil in it, which gives it some extra durability for the finish, and that's what he recommends. So that's what I did. We'll wait till tomorrow, and I'll finish it up with the Benuba. See you tomorrow.
I must have been having a bad day when I was doing the videotaping of how I finished the bowl with the Bumbleshoots and the polishing and all that, because I can't find any of that video footage. For that, I apologize. But the finishing process isn't that complicated. You saw me doing the sanding. Basically, I used my Surf Prep sander and hand sanding with the sponge pads from Surf Prep to get everything prepared. And then I put on the all-wood finish for my base coat. And then once I had my base coat on, I wanted to take one step up and go ahead and polish the epoxy before I put my final Benuba wax on. So after I put the base coat on, I went out and I bought some cheap tools from Ryobi, and they're for polishing compounds. And so I bought a sponge, a 3-inch foam. I'll try to put a link in the video description about where I got this. But anyway, I used this yellow sponge and this black sponge on this adapter for my drill press. And by using those, I was able then to use my 3M Perfect It polish. I only used 2 parts of it. And I would put that polish on the sponge itself and spread a little bit on the lip of the bowl. I would turn on my drill press and I would use it to actually shine the epoxy. I think you can get the gist of what I was doing. I don't have the video to show you, but that's what I did. I just basically went around the rim and I went around the inside, and I was using this polishing compound that I always use, the 3M Perfect It system, and these 2 sponges, which were of different grits. One was for compound pad and the other one was for a polishing pad. And the result was a very nice shiny rim. And then once I had that done, that's when I put the Benuba hard wax finish on it. So this is before I apply the Benuba, and I just finished polishing it. And the thing I like about it, and I'm not sure how well you can see it, is you can actually see some of the sparkle coming through now that you couldn't see before from the mica powder. So I like that part of it. Let's turn it over. And so now, if you look along the sides, everything was polished up, and you can see some of that sparkle start to shine through. So the next step is to go ahead and put the Benuba on it. And to put the Benuba on, it's like several other hard wax finishes. I just rubbed it in. I used that white applicator pad, and I rubbed it in. I let it sit for about a half hour to an hour, and then I polished it off. Put it on and buffed it off, and then I did one more coat after that, and it looks awesome. But I lost the video on how I was actually doing it, so I wanted to talk through it. I hope that helps. We just completed video 2. That's the second in the series, and that's all there is on how to create the epoxy and cherry bowl. I'm liking how it turned out. Hopefully you feel inspired to go do something like this yourself or a different one. Remember, a couple things that we needed to be aware of is, one, we needed to be able to ensure that our bits were long enough and that we had the ability to travel the carving of the bowl without actually crashing into the bottom or the sides of the bowl. And at the end of this second video in the software section, I showed you how I use a profile or the cross-section tool to figure that out. and move the bit over the top of it. I think that's a neat trick. That's a trick I learned from Kyle Eli in his Learn Your CNC course, and I use it quite often to check clearances of bits and my tools. So that's a pretty cool trick that we learned. We also learned how to use the limit plane for both carving the bottom of the bowl and the top of the bowl. We were most concerned with the limit plane for carving the top of the bowl so that we could get all the way down into the bottom of the bowl. And on the bottom of the bowl, we wanted to make sure that we were able to carve the sides of it all the way down to the lip of the bowl so we wouldn't have to use a profile cut. I also introduced a unique way of holding the project down, and it holds like a rock. That was a technique I learned from a friend of mine, Jim Matthews. He had built these bowls before, and he helped me a number of times in understanding what I needed to do in the Vectric software and why I was doing it. So a lot of thanks to my friend Jim Matthews. It takes a group of people helping each other in this process to master these software tools and the CNC projects, and that's why I make these videos. So I'll end this video with saying, I hope you're getting out in the shop. I hope you're exploring new adventures with your woodworking and CNC efforts and your laser efforts. And my goal on this channel is to support those efforts and help maybe inspire you to try something new. If you like what you saw in this video, please give me a thumbs up and a like. And also, if you want to see future videos, subscribe to the channel. Trying to build this channel, trying to get it exposure. And with that, I'll sign out until the next time I make a video, and hopefully you watch it and we meet in this medium. Go out in the shop, do something cool, have fun, and make the most out of life.